going on, everybody? Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Viall Files. Are we calling it Freestyle Edition until further notice?
That's fun.
Yeah, right? Because it's kind of like, well, Kail Lowry, our guest. These are always weird because we had such a tight turnaround that we so often we do our intros before or after our guests, but with our Tuesday episodes, our guests are part of our intros.
Okay,
Kail.
understood.
And so it's kind of like because we have to pump it out. We got to get it out. Anyway, we have Kail Lowry's with us today. We need to get in the housekeeping notes just because we've had some changes in the scheduling this week. Clayton and Susie won't be on today's episode. They'll be on tomorrow's episode.
Okay.
Because Josh Peck won't be on tomorrow's episode because he apparently is filming a Christopher Nolan movie and had to do pickups today. So that's a good enough excuse to cancel. I mean, he told us on Friday, I don't know, I might have to do some pickups. But apparently Josh Peck's in a Christopher Nolan movie.
That's exciting.
Congrats to him.
Now we have new things to talk about with him after his podcast tour.
We playfully joked that he has this really good book out, and he's done a lot of podcasts, and we try to get exclusives on this show. But Josh Peck's a big deal. We love him. We're a fan. And then we kind of joked that we're going to somehow try to get him to say something he hasn't said.
Right.
Because he's done a lot of podcasts.
But we need him to say something new on your podcast.
That's what we'll hope for.
Of course.
Anyway, he's not going to be on tomorrow's episode. It will be Clayton and Susie and my friends Matt King and his girlfriend Patricia to do a mediation call about what's crossing the line, like saying I love you or I'm in love with you when like complimenting someone, like I love like their art or I love what they do, but like in a relationship, does that like I'm in love with what you do or I love you and when it's a person of the opposite sex causes some rifts in a relationship.
Okay.
So anyways, we'll be talking with Matt King and Patricia about that. That's a mediation call. So Clayton, Susie, Patricia, Matt, all tomorrow. Now let's get to today's episode. We're going to talk a little, we'll probably talk a lot of Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. We'll get into some Selling Sunset, which I personally haven't watched yet, but Kail and Allie stands of the show. I just haven't had a chance yet.
Are we talking about Mike Tyson?
Oh, yeah.
We can.
Okay.
Did you?
I just thought that was
relevant.
Maybe I'm crazy. Yeah.
No.
No, yeah.
That also happened.
A lot of violence in the
I
news.
literally found out last night.
Yeah.
I was like,
oh, that happened, a few days ago.
I had no idea. I live under a rock.
Let's just start there.
Oh, okay.
Totally.
Mike Tyson was on a flight.
Flying coach.
No, he was flying first class.
He was flying commercial airline. Commercial.
Do we think that there's a level of celebrity that I think all assume they fly private?
I mean, it's Mike Tyson. I definitely thought he was flying private.
I mean, at some point, he definitely was.
Right.
And I don't know Mike Tyson's financial situation, but it's been I think it's common knowledge that at least in the past he's bought in a lot of shit.
Okay.
Like tigers and he went through a lot of money at one point. I know he famously like loves to feed pigeons, and so like I remember something a few years ago where he would it
was like Spencer Pratt with the hummingbirds,
and he would spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on like food for pigeons. So like he spends.
So then that would make sense for why he's flying commercial.
I think there's a lot of
spent it all on the pigeons,
right?
Yeah.
And tigers and stuff.
And they're not strong enough. He can't fly with them, so he has to find a different way.
On the Kardashians episode, I think 1 or 2, Kim talked about how Kanye flew commercial to support her SNL appearance.
But you know what? That's like a Kanye move. Like I feel like that doesn't surprise me. Because you just never know what to expect with Kanye.
That's like I did Uber pools when I was the Bachelor, right after filming. Yeah.
How did that go?
Fine.
I love an Uber pool. The camaraderie is unparalleled.
Well,
like carpool with strangers.
I learned about this was before it was like 6 years ago, and before I was the Bachelor, I was living in LA, and I money was tighter than it is for me now.
Right.
And I had no car, and I was just like getting around LA via Ubers. That adds up. And I had this friend of mine, a woman who in her like mid-20s, And she was like, you should Uber pool. And I was like, you Uber pool? It surprised me that she Uber pooled. And I thought to myself, if you can Uber pool, then I can Uber pool.
It builds character.
It does.
And also, like, it was at a time where people hadn't really discovered Uber pool. So, like, 75% of the time, you're still by yourself and paying 25% of the cost. It was just a no-brainer. And what I would do is I would always sit shotgun. So I would just, if it was an Uber pool, I would get in, sit shotgun. I'd put headphones on. So, like,
They wouldn't talk to you.
They wouldn't talk to you. And most of the time, no one had any idea
That you were like in the car.
That's always such a power move, getting in an Uber and sitting in the front seat.
Oh my God.
Did they ever say anything to you?
Yeah, it was an Uber pool. Like, at some point, like, someone's getting in the front.
Not if it's just the two of you.
Right.
No, but I didn't know.
You gotta
I was
stake
like,
your
hey, man. Yeah. And so, like, but after I got done filming, I would still Uber pool. And this was like when I was getting noticed a lot.
You were hot shit.
No, I mean, anyway. I think the point of all this, I think celebrities fly a commercial far more than we.
Like I would assume, I guess.
It gets just really
I don't know.
expensive to
Yeah.
fly. I mean, I saw Jennifer Garner. I've seen a lot of big celebrities on planes.
Yeah.
Prince Harry used to fly commercial, and they would like work out a thing. He would just be him and like a protection officer in like plain clothes, and they'd figure out a way for him to be the last one on and the first one off, so like no one would notice him. But he would just sit in the front row and then like yeet off the plane.
I mean, I feel like that makes sense. But when you think of like Mike Tyson and then what happened, the first thing I thought was, why is he flying commercial?
Because it
'Cause he
costs
fed
a lot of
pigeons.
Because he fed too
Well,
many
he fed
pigeons.
too many pigeons.
I also think that it's like people's relationship with money gets cemented so early on. So no matter how much money you make, even though it might like change and morph, there's still that like kind of fundamental, like especially like, I don't know anybody's background, but like in general, like I feel like the money it takes to fly private is probably a really hard pill to swallow no matter
Right.
what.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
And so it's like, and I think that's the thing that I've learned so much about like from like being in LA and like having friends who work for celebrities is that it's like they still want to save money.
Totally.
Like they
Totally.
still want to be saving money.
Makes sense.
Like in the celebrity world, like especially actors, you can get fired from any job, but there's just less security in this space of like you just never know where your next paycheck's coming from,
Right.
so to speak.
Yeah.
So if you have like extravagant spending habits, this is all to say, flying private is really fucking expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And people always talk about like the first time you fly first class, like
It ruins
it
everything.
ruins everything about flying, and it can get really expensive. Imagine getting used to that. But anyways, Mike Tyson's flying commercial, and someone on the flight was inebriated. It seemed like excessively,
Extremely intoxicated.
and just
How do you get that drunk on a plane?
I don't know because
you kidding?
the flight here, the guy next to
A
me,
ton of drinks?
super nice. All he was drinking was Jack Daniels.
But like
The
they don't
entire
they
6
don't
hours.
come
Also,
through enough time.
this
Oh
is-
no, she did.
Oh.
This
And
is
she
coming
even
from
sent him 2 shots to go.
Oh hell yeah.
This is
He
also
made
coming
plans.
from Allie, who I have seen pour liquor into like shampoo TSA regulation size bottles to take them through.
Have you?
Yes,
That's really
and it's
creative.
So
very
here's the
effective.
process. Here's the process. I'm not recommending it because it's not technically okay. But if you wanted to,
She
if you
smuggles
wanted
alcohol.
to, you can get
What?
those little TSA size bottles, right? You get 2 of them because whatever, you're flying. You have 2 different ones, and I put tequila is a little too risky because it smells. I put vodka in both of them, and I add a little bit of lime juice to one, so they look like different ones, and I label them like makeup remover and something else. And I add a little bit of baking soda to neutralize like any odor, and then it also adds a little nice fizzy. Then I put it in a
you put
Ziploc
baking
bag.
soda in your alcohol.
Yeah, you can't
Can you
taste it,
drink
but it helps
baking
you.
soda?
Yeah. So, anyways, you put it in a
Do
Ziploc
you like
bag.
to drink that much, or is this more like a budget thing?
It's a budget thing.
I'm not paying you
It's
enough.
a budget.
That's-
You're also
Correct.
you're a problem solver.
I'm
No,
a
this is
problem solver.
innovative.
So you put it in a Ziploc bag with like toothbrush and cotton pads because it's makeup remover. And then you go through TSA. And then you go to a store in the airport and you buy like a vitamin water. And then you go to the bathroom and you pour some of the vitamin water out. You put the alcohol in, you shake it up, and you take it on the plane. Meanwhile, your dog's in a carrier watching you do it. And she's like, fuck it, we're doing it again, mom.
and you're being on the dog pee pad.
I love
Good for you. But also, like other people who don't smuggle in alcohol
I have never done this before,
On
guys.
a
It's
layover.
Just an
theory.
idea.
It's a theory.
on a layover, you can get drunk on
You go to a
at a
lounge?
Chili's bar. You know,
Oh, yeah. A Chili's 2? Have you guys ever seen those?
Yeah.
They're like mini
Mini
Chili's.
Chili's?
Yeah, at the O'Hare.
love it.
The bars are always packed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even
I don't know,
if
I
it's
kinda
like 8
like your
a.m.
idea.
People will drink at
Oh,
like 8 a.m. at
100%.
an airport.
Oh,
Yeah.
at airport? No.
Yeah.
8 a.m.?
Yeah.
6 a.m.
5 a.m.
Yeah.
It's like, you know how there's like maritime law? I feel like we need a word for like airport law because people are like the most like unfiltered, like animalistic version of themselves.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
there are
It's
no
like
rules.
vacation
People are
mode.
stressed.
I remember like having an early flight. It was like a 5, like we were there at the time of day where most of like even the Dunkin' Donuts wasn't open yet. You know,
No.
it was that early, and people were like going to the bar trying to order Bloody Marys, and they're like, "We don't start serving alcohol till 6:30," and they were mad.
Yeah.
And I was like,
I try not to fly before 8 a.m. Like I won't do it. Yesterday was the first time I've done it in years.
"It's a lot."
I
You
just
respect
can't. And then there's
yourself.
yeah, you know
'Cause
what? I
it-
just do.
Because
And
it's so easy. Like you're on the flights and you're like, I'll do like a 6 a.m. flight. You forget that you have to get there like 2 hours
hours
Well,
early.
that's the
earlier.
thing. When you like flying 8 a.m. still means you're getting up at 5.
right.
Yeah.
Totally.
To get and the airport's like an hour and a half from my house.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no,
And
thank
I think
you.
it's okay. I feel like it's almost doable on the way to a vacation, but on the way back, there is nothing worse
No.
than when you're like, I sold myself out. Like I cannot believe I have to do this.
100%.
I think if you're coming back, that's why living West Coast is nice because you actually get your day back, but you should never be flying before noon if you don't have to.
Yeah, no.
Because like you
But
realize
see, I don't know, because I did the opposite last night, and I left New York at 7:30, and then I like got in here at like midnight, and I was like, it's 3 for me now, and that was miserable.
Are you from New York?
No, I was just there for the weekend.
Oh,
but
okay.
like doing a really late night is not any better.
I like red eyes.
well, that's
actually.
I love. Anyway, we're getting
We're off topic.
It's a whole episode on how
On
you should
flights.
fly on flying. Mike Tyson beat the shit out of someone on a plane is what we're talking about. So the discussion is, and very long story short, is this very inebriated, annoying fan was badgering Mike Tyson, and turns out this person, I don't know if this is relevant or not, has an arrest record. So he's been arrested for. I don't know if it's being annoying, but like he's been arrested. That's like a character. Of course, Mike Tyson has been arrested too. So there is that.
But it's context for
It's
like
context.
another.
This guy's been
altercation.
arrested for it sounds like he's been arrested for like being a punk.
So this is like what he does.
Kind of.
Okay.
And I don't know at what point it escalated, but Mike Tyson, world-class boxer, and to the point where one could argue that his hands are
Like registered.
like weapons, like legit
Mhm.
weapons, started punching this guy. So the big question is that like it's not okay to punch anyone. So we're never condoning violence. But at what point, like, do you have the right to like protect yourself from harassment if someone's like really getting in your face? And how many times can you ask them nicely? At what point do you have the right to push back? As someone like, I don't think Mike Tyson should have punched the guy. I'm not saying that, but it's like this guy truly seemed to be asking for it.
And I think that's so frustrating in arguments when someone's behaving super badly and there's an expectation on the other person to just take it, to react calmly. And it's like, at what point are you allowed to respond to crazy with a little bit of crazy of your own?
Right. It's like nobody ever is talking about what they did to provoke you, just the reaction that you give.
Totally.
Yeah. And the reality is Mike Tyson being a celebrity, being a boxer, he should be held to a higher standard.
Right.
There is that argument. And
Yeah, but it's also, but he took a selfie with the guy. Like, I think we have like Ezra Miller, who's like doing, like throwing chairs at women in Hawaii. And this to me feels like a situation where like, of course, violence never the answer, but like he was trying to be nice. This guy was just like kept antagonizing him
Right.
again and again and again.
But there was nothing to do other than punch him? Like,
Where was the flight attendant?
exactly. Like, was there an air marshal? Like in Bridesmaids? What's his face? Can we get him?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, definitely. But also it seems like he's not being charged with anything.
Well, I think the guy didn't.
Got a lawyer.
He wouldn't cooperate
speak.
with
Yeah,
police.
he was being cooperative.
The guy who got punched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I think he realized he fucked up, maybe? I don't know.
I mean, he probably sobered up pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if you're a fan of Mike Tyson, kind of an iconic story to get punched by him. Again, like terrible and painful, but like
I thought the same thing.
if you're trying to get a celebrity encounter out of it, like
I
you got a
survived a punch
celebrity encounter.
from Mike Tyson.
It's like you wanted a selfie, you got a video that is on the internet
You're
for
viral.
everyone.
He's telling that story for the rest of his life.
Yeah, for sure.
With, to your point, with probably great pride.
I couldn't watch the video. My friend tried to show it to me last night. I was like, I don't want to see it. Like I couldn't see it.
He was just kind of...
Yeah, just he kept going and I was like, turn it off.
It was crazy. Anyways, it's a nice segue to, I think, the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp when we're talking about what's the limit of potentially defending yourself amidst crazy. April is Earth Month, which means a lot of us are giving a little extra to how we treat the planet. And you need a pair of Rothys. Why? Because it's made with recyclable plastic. You can take plastic that might otherwise go into a landfill and you can make it into like reusable, like quality, fashionable things. Man, the shoes I have, you never would imagine they're made from recyclable plastic. They're incredibly comfortable. And then the best part is they always look new. You could wear them at Coachella and you throw them in the washing machine.
It'll be sparkling.
And they also wouldn't take forever to dry. So give an amazing gift of sustainability and fashion to yourself or a loved one. Certainly love my Rothys. I always hear compliments of how people look. They have a bunch of different designs. And the best part is they're incredibly comfortable, no breakout period. So to get your pair of Rothys and feeling better about your footprint in terms of how you affect Mother Earth, get $20 off your first pair today at rothys.com/VIALL. That's ROTHYS.com/VIALL. Canva. Take it away, ladies.
The other day, my friend who works in casting or production texted our friend group chat and she said, does anyone know a graphic designer that my team can hire? And I said, no, but I can use Canva. And she was like, okay, do you want to take a shot at it? And I created an entire flyer for her company and they thought I was a professional graphic designer. They will never need to know the difference.
What more could we say?
It's also like I made the invitation for Allie's birthday party on Canva.
And it was cute too.
It was fun.
She packed a lot in there.
Yay.
So even if you're not doing presentations or marketing campaigns for companies, you can look like you hired a professional for cards and gifts for friends. You can
do they have all the Instagram formats. They have story, like grid, etc. Like if you want to up your social presence.
I got someone a print of his dogs for his birthday and they sent me like a digital file. And then in addition to me printing it out for him, I turned it into a screensaver for his phone.
Canva Pro is a design platform that empowers you to create and share stunning content in just a few clicks. Designing with Canva Pro is amazingly fast and fun. Choose from thousands of templates that are easy to customize or start from scratch. So to get your Canva Pro and become the professional content creator you always wanted to be, design like a pro with Canva Pro. Right now, you can get a free 45-day extended trial when you use my promo code. Just go to canva.me/VIALL to get your free 45-day extended trial. That is canva.me/VIALL, canva.me/VIALL. We had Elizabeth on from Variety to talk about it a little bit last week, and I feel like so much has come out since then. It's kind of an overwhelming thing. My overall takeaway is this is just continues. I think it's really just sad, and depressing, and my fear is that it will have long-term ramifications far beyond like what's being talked about. At the end of the day, I think these are two huge celebrities that still only care about how it's affecting them. And I don't know if there's a lot of consideration for how people will perceive this and how it will play a role in society. I mean, there's just such big celebrities. Also, do we know why this is being shown as like a reality TV show? Like, how is it decided whether courts have cameras in or not? Do we know?
I don't know. I just got out of a defamation lawsuit. There was no.
You did?
Yeah.
Personally?
I lost. Yeah. Well, it was dismissed. I didn't lose. It was dismissed.
You were suing them?
Yeah.
For defaming you?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it was a waste of $200,000.
I'm so sorry.
But you live and you learn. And
what light can you shed on this? Like, why did you lose? Because I think also a lot of people on when it comes to this, there's the court case that we're following,
Right.
and then there's the story of the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp relationship.
Right.
And as it relates to this court case, those are two very different things, right? Because Johnny Depp is suing Amber Heard for defamation. He's choosing, Johnny Depp wanted this trial.
Right.
It's my understanding that Amber Heard and her team tried to get this dismissed 4 separate times. So, and she didn't want this trial. He did. And it's not like they weren't both brought in here by like the government.
Right.
This is not like a trial, like no one's going to jail after this. This is Johnny Depp wanting this to happen to get what I assume his side out. So you have experience in this.
Yeah.
What other than it sounds like you regret it. What was your biggest takeaway and what did you learn about this and how are you seeing this trial differently as a result?
I actually don't regret it because I stood up for myself. I felt like I was taking just like a lot and I stood up for myself. So ultimately, like, if nothing else, that's what I got out of it.
Who did you sue?
On one of my castmates on the show.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it was dismissed because I personally think it was, the state of Florida. I had to sue her in the state of Florida. And they just looked at things very differently. But I think the judge didn't feel like I proved malice. Like she purposefully spread rumors and lies. You know what I mean?
So it's the intent so they weren't even arguing whether she did it or not.
Correct.
It was she didn't mean to ruin your life, so to speak.
Correct. So that was dismissed.
Interesting.
But for Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, I mean, I'm pretty sure he lost every single one of his deals except for Dior.
But it also, I think you make an interesting point. I think it's relevant in this case because, I mean, it's my TikTok For You page is a lot of Amber Heard and Johnny Depp trial. And there's a lot of lawyers. I don't know anything about these lawyers or their qualifications, but they're self-identified lawyers, like giving insight from the legal standpoint. And I've seen a handful of takes suggesting that they don't think Johnny should win, not because of who they believe, but more based off of there doesn't seem to be enough evidence to suggest that her op-ed could be directly linked to his demise or that it was malice.
I agree with that.
I don't know if I agree with it either, but again, I'm not from a lawyer standpoint. It just seems like the burden of proof seems to really fall on
the wrong person.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how I feel.
Yeah.
And also it's really hard too because it varies from state to state. So the laws and what you have to prove are a little bit different. And I feel like the same case that they fight in California could be very different in New York. And the outcome could be different in Texas. And the outcome could be different in Florida. And that's super frustrating too.
And it sounds like that because it's in Virginia, this trial.
Yeah, it's in Fairfax County.
And
why
heard
Virginia?
Because that's where the servers of the publication who Amber wrote the 2018 article, like that is the center of this trial. The servers are located there. So that is why it is there.
I also heard, and I don't know if this is true, but to Kail's point, the defamation laws are a little bit more lenient in Virginia than they are in other states. Like the burden of proof, I don't think is as difficult. And I think they have different laws around, like this is a jury trial.
Right.
And in your case, it sounds like it was at least decided by the judge who dismissed it, or was there still a jury trial?
Mine didn't end up going to the jury trial because opposing counsel filed an anti-slap motion, which is essentially like, she didn't defame me, I'm trying to silence her freedom of speech. So not all states recognize them in the same way or have that.
That is really interesting. But anyway, so yeah, there's a lot of parallels between this case, and it seems like Virginia seems to be specifically chosen. And again, I don't know what Virginia's laws are, but to your point, there are different laws in different states, and it seems like it might be more in favor, or the burden of proof is like easier in Virginia.
Makes sense.
But it seems like the support seems to be going more in Johnny's direction. Is that?
I mean, when I'm watching them, I would say I support Johnny.
Yeah.
Which surprises me. I didn't know that people were saying he shouldn't win.
Well, again, I think lawyers are saying that as it relates to the defamation.
Like from a legal standpoint.
Okay. And I think when it comes to people watching this trial, I don't think most people are really giving a shit or caring about like that.
Right.
I think also they just, someone who doesn't have I don't know a lot about defamation cases or how it all works. So I think and Elizabeth mentioned this last week, where what we're hearing is different than what the jury's hearing too.
Right.
And I think we often, like, we're watching a lot of clips from the trial, but we're also being inundated with a bunch of information outside of what's going on, and I don't know if we even know what's what. I mean, I
Right.
don't, right? There's so much out there, and it's just like, we hear these tapes, et cetera, but was this shown to the jury? Is it not shown? Like, something could be inadmissible, so there is that. But
Johnny's so funny when he answers the questions. He has like, I don't want to call it condescending, but just like a very funny way of answering all the questions.
It's
Like,
just very like dry and to the point.
Yeah.
Like someone was like, would you say like you started drinking at this hour or you like drank early? And he was always like,
isn't it happy hour?
happy hour somewhere?
Yeah. No,
You know, like it's just very like.
It's a bit tongue in cheek.
yeah. Or like
Yes.
they asked him, is this your signature like 4 or 5 different times?
Yeah.
And he's like, the same signature that you asked me the last 3 times? Yes, that's my signature.
Oh my God, I saw this compilation of the lawyer being like, did I get that correct?
Oh yeah,
Did I
No.
get
read
that
right?
correct?
It
Did I
was-
read that right? Yeah.
Or the hearsay.
Yeah.
It was the
Um,
hearsay one where
my gosh.
Johnny Depp was like learning about what hearsay was, because at first he didn't
No.
know.
Yeah.
So the way he was answering the questions was, I guess, technically
Hearsay.
hearsay.
Yeah.
You know? So Johnny was kind of, I guess, endearingly like answering that way. And it just raises an interesting point, because like that's the problem I guess I have with this overall trial, is because you are talking about these major celebrities and then you bring in fandom into the equation. And I do think we need to be careful with that, because our love for Johnny and or Amber Heard shouldn't play a role in terms of how we feel about the case, but it's also impossible not to have it play a role.
I agree. Although I will say I had no idea who Amber Heard was prior to this.
Really.
I had no clue.
Yeah, me
Same.
neither.
I might live under a rock, but
She is a fairly, I mean, she's not Johnny Depp A-list celebrity, but she's been in some big movies.
like what?
Aquaman.
Oh,
too.
really?
Yeah.
I've seen that 100 times. What character did she
She's
play?
the queen, like that's what I'm saying. Like she's
Okay.
she's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I will say I first heard of her as well as Johnny Depp's wife
Mhm.
long before, but anyway.
Well, it's interesting also because it's like, and thinking about fandom and how that exists prior to this case, it's like in court, there are character witnesses. So it's like, it's confusing as well, because it's not like it's completely out of pocket to take into account someone's persona beyond like the strict facts of the case and the way they exist in the courtroom in the moment.
Right.
But then when you add celebrity to it and you have like stan culture and this kind of like frothing at the mouth, like tribalism fandom, it's like it gets muddy really quickly.
You know, what I've learned, whether it's watching The Bachelor or following pop culture or just in life, you know what really seems to trigger people more than anything is that feeling misled or tricked by people.
Right.
You know, when people watch The Bachelor, no one on the show gets more hate than someone who presented themselves as a good person only to be portrayed as a bad person, like through
Right.
the edit. So
Right.
it's just like, we thought you were a good, it happens a lot in Paradise when you have like, oh, we loved you. And then it's the Tyra Banks, we were rooting for you type of like energy.
Rooting for you.
Yeah. And I think just when we feel led on by someone, especially someone who we thought was like a role model of some kind, someone we looked up to, and then we learn about a behavior that makes us feel quite the opposite, I think our level of hatred or just
Like
feeling
animosity.
animosity towards that person is magnified times 10.
Yeah, because of the perceived betrayal of it.
Yeah, and I think, and when you look at this trial, I think that's where a lot of the focus is on, is because Amber Heard wrote this op-ed for the Washington Post and essentially propped herself up as
Like a victim.
well, not only a victim, but like a figurehead in the Me Too movement, so to
Right.
speak. And now with all this information coming to light, we are learning that Amber Heard is while she still could be a victim of emotional and physical abuse,
Sure.
she also seems to be it's what's clear is that she's clearly a perpetrator. From what I understand from the information that's out there, like Johnny Depp has said some horrid things
Right.
to and about Amber Heard, which again, as not a therapist, I would say that sounds emotionally abusive
Right.
at times. Like, he doesn't seem like he is without some fault here.
Sure.
But when it comes to Amber, it's like she's admitted to physical violence. Like, it still seems unclear. It seems like he said, she said when it comes to whether Johnny ever laid a hand on Amber Heard. Unless I'm missing something, there doesn't seem to be hard evidence that would suggest that he has physically laid a hand on her. But there is evidence, like a lot of evidence that suggests that she has.
Including her own admission on a tape.
That more than anything, yes, her own admission. She was once arrested before she ever dated Johnny Depp for hitting her ex-girlfriend. So she even has a documented history of domestic abuse.
What was the makeup that came out?
Oh, Milani.
Oh, then there was
Milani.
that, right? So then there's her lawyer said, like, this was the makeup kit that Amber Heard used to cover up bruises that she claimed were given to her by Johnny Depp. And then the Milani makeup company did this whole viral TikTok that said, we didn't make this until 2017, and she was claiming to using this in 2016, which, on one level I think to myself, maybe she confused the makeup kit.
No, probably not.
You also at best this shows that your facts you're confusing your perceived facts. And so either you're lying or you just are you're misremembering certain things. And if you're someone who can so easily misremember something, you're less likely to be, you combine that with the fact that she's done all these things, it gets a little messy. But I guess my concern is it doesn't mean that Johnny Depp hasn't done things wrong either.
But it's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
Yeah.
And if they can't prove it, I think it's really sad though. I think if you're using makeup to cover bruises, that's trauma. You're going to remember what you used, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I just wonder, there's obviously a lot of women who have been victims of domestic abuse, and it seems like there's a lot of anger and animosity towards Amber Heard because it will have long-term ramifications on people who need to be believed.
Do they have kids together?
No.
No, he has them from a previous relationship.
I wonder how his kids are doing.
Well, a big part of what he seems, is like, why did he come forward? Which I do think is interesting. On some level, do we take into account the fact that Johnny Depp wanted this trial, and he must have known that some of these ugly things that he has said and done would come up.
Yeah.
And it seems like Johnny Depp said, fuck it. I would rather have people hear that things I am ashamed of and need to apologize for and think of me as someone who has said some potentially verbally abusive things versus I've hit a woman before.
Right.
And it's like he chose lesser of two evils.
It goes back to the Mike Tyson thing though, right? At what point do you fight back? At what point do you stand up and defend yourself? And the cost of that is him having the verbal abuse come out. But I mean, we're talking about his whole entire career.
Yeah.
His kids are 20 and 22. And that was actually one thing that he cited as a key reason for why he was proceeding with this trial, was wanting his kids to not have to respond to false allegations about him as an abuser. And so it's very
like a wife beater.
Yeah. It's like his whole personal life is just getting so exposed and ripped apart. And then there's also there's so many nuanced elements of this, where there's the fact that both Amber and Johnny are coming from households where they experienced abuse as children. There's also the substance use of it all.
I don't know if they're showing this stuff in court, but they had a lot of their phone calls recorded.
Yeah.
And at one point he reached a level of frustration with Amber and he was like, I'll see you in court. He was like, I never said what you said I did. I never did that. I'll see you in court.
And also he's like I've seen recordings of multiple recordings of him pleading with her, being like, you can't hit me, and saying like, at some point I'm going to respond. Back to the Mike Tyson thing, where it's just like, at some point I'm going to defend myself and escalate. Like if you get talked to a certain way, like you can be a calm person, but at some point you match people's energy.
Right.
And we talked about this last week. Like, I think that it was a wrong to say, like, I don't know what, like, I think we referred to it as mutual abuse, which probably is a wrong way of phrasing that. But what happens, it's pretty common, I think, in relationships, not necessarily the physical aspect. When we think about our young loves, our early relationships, we all have been guilty of yelling at each other and fighting. And is that just two toxic people? But like, how do you hold the individual accountable when you, I guess,
engage in it as well,
and you engage in it as well
with the dynamic?
Yeah.
I don't know that you can, because you're doing the same thing.
Yeah, if you're both basically saying fuck you and name calling and using inappropriate language and belittling one another, like, does it matter who started it to a certain point or no? It really, I don't know the answer to
I
that.
don't know the answer.
And it's like, but you recognize the wanting, like, you want to remove yourself from a situation, but sometimes, people will say, well, it's not as easy to remove yourself from a situation.
Yeah, and I think when there is a situation where it's like this dynamic is so toxic and you have two participants in it, it's worth considering like the power dynamics that exist, both kind of in the relationship and then also within the toxicity of it. Because I think so often when we talk about domestic violence as it takes place with women in households, not on like this large celebrity scale, there's the element of, women oftentimes still primarily being tasked with taking care of kids in a lot of relationships, and how they might not have the financial freedom to leave, and how that power dynamic can really influence the context with which there is this toxicity. And so it's really, there's so much context, and it's so confusing, and it's so hard to parse through all of the various things and assign blame to people,
right,
while also holding accountability. It's just like, it's a mess.
Yeah.
Well, then there was the tape of Johnny moaning in agony while detoxing from his self-identified opiate addiction. And my understanding is that Johnny Depp accused her of withholding his medication that was prescribed to him by his doctor to help him get through his detox,
like a Suboxone or something like that.
Like some sort of either pain relief or whatever while he was going through this detox.
Okay.
And as his wife was his primary caregiver, so she was responsible for giving this medication, of which he claimed that she was withholding, like psychological. Like, if that's true, that's torture.
That's so. What a weird. You got to be sick to do something like that. I just feel like, what kind of power or ego trip was she dealing with?
I don't know.
God,
And again,
so
like
weird.
that I don't know if that's also proven. That is
Alleged.
That is an alleged accusation from Johnny Depp. I don't know if there's actual proof. There was a tape of him moaning.
I don't feel like you could make that up. And I'm not even a huge Johnny Depp fan, but that's just like so weird to come up with.
And if that is true, boy, I mean, whatever, like that can mess with someone's brain, psychology, and
that's traumatic.
And and so like, if he said any of these nasty things about Amber Heard after that, do we look at it differently as a result of him literally being tortured by her, if it's true? Because that would be torture.
I don't know. I feel like I would give him some forgiveness for that. Yeah.
And it is kind of, it's just a wild case, but
Yeah, and it's so triggering to so many people. And I think it's hard because in even trying to unpack it, you're asking questions and like kind of what you were saying before about how this, like, I think there's a real fear that this is going to undo some progress that we've made in terms of like believing victims of abuse, specifically women, of like, in order to unpack this, you have to scrutinize people,
right,
in a way that is, I think, really unbecoming when you're talking about violence, especially sexual violence, because you don't want survivors to feel sort of like interrogated, like, it's obviously an incredibly tender subject that you want to approach with a lot of care. But in order to parse through all of this stuff, you have to ask those questions. And I don't know. It's like, I feel really uncomfortable
Right.
talking about it because
Yeah.
I feel like it's just like really uncomfortable for me, like
Totally.
portraying Amber Heard as
Like a villain.
the bad guy, because you don't want her to be perceived as like the rule, when in fact it seems maybe like she's more of the exception in terms of like a victim who might be coming forward and making claims that are false.
Yeah, I mean, it's an uncomfortable conversation to try to have, but for someone who knowing she was a perpetrator of domestic abuse, because that's like irrefutable at this point, is it
I don't
not?
listen. So I was married and I pushed my ex-husband, and then I got in another relationship afterwards and he was abusive towards me, and I felt like I have felt up until this point like I can't talk about that because I pushed my ex-husband in 2012. So it's hard because it's like, okay, yeah, I did do that. I've owned it. I've talked about it. I've apologized for it. So now I can't, I have
Yeah.
been, I guess you could call that, abusive. And then I turn around. You get what I'm saying?
Sure, yeah.
And now I can't talk about the abuse in my most recent relationship because of that.
That's an interesting point too. Yeah.
Does that
And-
make sense?
No, it totally does. And we mentioned that Amber Heard was arrested for hitting an
Mhm.
ex-girlfriend. That doesn't mean
That she hasn't been abused
by,
after
by,
that.
by Johnny
Yeah.
Depp.
Right.
But it's, people do use it as like data points. Even us discussing the Mike Tyson thing, like be like, oh, well, the guy that he punched did have an arrest for this. Like it's like all these data points of
Right.
what people bring to these conversations.
Right.
I guess it's just more the fact that she's on tape admitting to hitting Johnny Depp. For her to have written this op-ed
hmm
and kind of propping herself up as someone that other, specifically women victims, could look up to as someone who gives them a sense of courage and purpose, like just feel like you're not alone.
Right.
To know that in this specific relationship where she was she never named Johnny Depp, but it was clear who she was talking about. Yeah, I think you just feel really betrayed.
She already had an arrest record at that point. So
Apparently, yeah. But to your point, like you're like, just because she, like, who knows the context? I mean, I don't, and it's never okay,
right. Never.
but it doesn't mean you're not it doesn't completely, like, if,
One doesn't cancel out the other.
yeah. So it is very messy. Shanti, you've been following this case, and is this something you're comfortable talking about? But you've talked about with us that you're a survivor of domestic abuse.
Yeah, I do feel extremely comfortable talking about it because it's an uncomfortable situation. And, I was in a violent relationship when I was much younger, and it was hard to get out. And just like Kail said, you do feel like if you did do anything to that person as well, then maybe you don't have justification to then say I was a victim of domestic violence. And it took me a lot of years to realize that it wasn't my fault, but there are two sides to the story. And you're right. We all do want to kind of, defend Amber or not defend Amber, but you also look at it like Johnny is guilty as well. But as a victim and a survivor of domestic violence, I do have a tendency to think that Amber might be a little bit more guilty. And I'm just saying that as my opinion, because it does seem like she's more of an aggressor. And just like you guys are saying, I don't think that Johnny's completely innocent in this, but I do think that there's so far been a lot of evidence that really shows. And I'd like her to be a spokesperson, but I don't feel like she really can be a spokesperson for someone like myself who was in a domestic violence relationship. I don't feel like she is the right spokesperson for those who have survived domestic violence.
How does it make you feel being a survivor, having heard some of this testimony? Like, do you have a specific feeling towards this case?
I do, because so far, based on the evidence, it seems like she was very violent. Like she really hurt him a lot. Words are one thing, and words can be bad. But so far, based on this, he's got a finger that's damaged. Like he seems to have had more of the physical abuse and the emotional abuse than she, but it still has to come out, right? And it's all very triggering. You know what I mean? I'm big enough to admit that when I was in a relationship, just like Kail said, did I push back a couple of times? Absolutely. but he was more violent, and I'm the one who was strangled on the neck and hit in the stomach. And you know what I mean? So as the aggressor, yeah, did I do a couple of things that were wrong? Did I antagonize him? Possibly, but I was still hurt more. And so far, based on the evidence, normally you're right. You do want to kind of, even though it's sexist, you do want to kind of back the female. But so far, I feel like she was more the aggressor, and he was trying as much as he can to not hurt her back. He said awful things via text, but again, like, you can also journal those things. As long as you don't actually do them, it's not as bad.
Yeah.
My lawyer told me, don't ever send a text that you can't read on a witness stand.
Yeah.
Changed my
That's
life.
smart.
Because you just never know when they're going to come up.
Totally. Shanti, thank you for sharing. I think this is Shanti's first time talking on the show.
Aw.
Anyways, we thank you for being so vulnerable about it. But yeah, I just think I think that's the biggest takeaway. I think it's just a really sad situation because it just seems like this, while so many people are consuming this trial, it just seems like it's going to do more harm than good. I think the only one maybe positive takeaway is I think it does shine a light on, from a guy's standpoint, about like that domestic abuse, specifically like verbal abuse, like, and physical abuse can happen the other direction.
Mhm.
And I think, I know that a lot of guys feel uncomfortable even acknowledging that, or that they were treated a certain way, whether it's fear that people won't believe them. And I know that's something all women who have been victimized deal with too. It's just, I think any victim worries that whether they're going to believe. And then if you're a guy, there's that thought of like, don't be a pussy, you can take it kind of thing. And I do think there is a positive aspect of creating conversations around that topic of, it's okay for a guy to speak up and say, like, I don't want to be talked to this way. And again, like, it's something I mentioned last week, not in any way, like, not in any abusive situation, but like, I've gotten better in the little bit, like, when you're dating someone, it's just that's your person.
Right.
So it's just common when you're hangry or tired or frustrated and they're next to you to just, talk to them in a frustrated manner that seems unjustified to that person.
Right.
And I think in the past, when my girlfriends were just in a bad mood or whatever, they would like, oh, you're just an asshole or whatever. And I remember as a young man, I would just take it. I would just be like, ha ha ha, or like, it's okay to talk to me that way because, and as I've gotten older, I've learned to say, and I don't, like, Nally doesn't talk to me that way, but even once in a while, if someone's in a bad mood, you just say, hey, you can be in a bad mood and I'm here for you, but like, please don't speak to me this way.
Right.
And I've gotten better at saying that. And it's really helped my relationships because it's one of those things. In the past, I used to just let it slide, only for it to start bothering me. And then when I would bring it up, it was like, what are you talking about? And it just became too much, as opposed to just saying, hey, we can be upset, and like, I think it's okay for people in relationships to say, hey, please like focus on the energy you're bringing. And it's not that it's abusive or anything. It's just like, it feels uncalled for on the receiving end sometimes. And I do think there's like a positive takeaway, I guess, is a healthy dialogue around that. But other than that, it's a real messy thing.
I will be so curious to see how it turns out, because I just feel like in lawsuits, you just literally never know which way it's going to go. Like, you could feel like you have a slam dunk case. I mean, I have brought defamation cases to my attorneys multiple times, and they always told me no, 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 no. Brought this one against my castmate, and they were like, yes, we got this.
And you still
And I lost. Well, I didn't lose. It was dismissed, but I mean, same thing. It's essentially a loss, So I would just be so curious if, we're kind of all...
Well, it also begs the question, like, I think maybe part of the reason that Johnny Depp might have proceeded with this case is like the public perception.
Right.
And like, of course, there is like the financial aspect. There is being vindicated like in a court of law. But even from what we're hearing so far, there's been this mass versus before where like I had like a vague thought of Johnny Depp as a wife beater. And now
Sure. Yeah.
I am learning so much more about this relationship. So the question is like, how much of it is even about the specific outcome of the trial versus just like
Principle.
the truth being and like being heard on a large
Yeah.
scale.
And that was my takeaway from mine, was it was the principle. I'm standing up for myself. So I care less about the dollar. I care less about the amount, but it's like, I'm going to stand up for what's not true. You're not going to spread this about me. And I feel like he also, it's probably about principle for him to some degree.
I don't think he gives a fuck about whether he
Wins or
actually
loses?
Wins or loses.
Yeah, but I think it's exactly to like both of your points. Like
Right.
now everyone, I think we, at least me, like I was like, oh, case closed. Johnny Depp's a bad person. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
we're like, we had this view of him. And now even the fact that people are, stepping back and evaluating both sides. And I think from what we've seen and heard, a lot of people are leaning towards
Johnny.
him now.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's really not about the money.
No.
I also,
Principle.
I also think like the degree to which it is like ugly and toxic and it is being like ripped apart and viewed in the public eye, like so often these like most unbecoming moments that we experience, like are so shrouded in shame because it's like really upsetting both for you or your partner to admit like the depths of depravity you've gone to, like the crazy things you said. And I think there is something about, and of course, like in so many ways, these are not normal people. There is like a scale of like detachment from real society.
Right.
But seeing just how toxic it is and actually getting those messages, I think on some level for anybody who's ended up in a really bad situation, I think it's almost, I don't want to say like validating, but like just like seeing those messages, I think sort of expose something that we so often never get to see.
I wonder if those messages and the things that he's admitted to, like any of his fault, will actually impact like his career more or the same as her accusations in the first place. Because, he lost so much.
Yeah.
Will he lose more? Will he get any of them back?
Well, he kind of has lost it all, other
Mhm.
than you said
The Dior, I think. Yeah.
I feel like her career is done, and I actually could see him getting work again as time passes because, and I don't even know if this is right, but the sentiment of, I think a lot of people is this room, which is, I just took Amber Heard's accusations at face value. I
Mhm.
wanted to believe her. I now have found out that she like physically abused him. It's on there to date. There's no hard evidence that he did physically abused her. And in fact, like some of these, like this makeup kit would suggest that maybe she's not completely truthful. And I think there's a lot of internal like feeling bad for casting judgment on a person now that we now wonder is innocent. And I think that's where a lot of people watching the trial, I think that's where most of their energy is going. And I think we all love a redemption story just in general.
Right.
And I think
He has room, I think, more room to redeem himself than she does.
Right. I think people will, because of their guilt of assuming the worst in him and then backtracking, allows people to want to see him have this comeback.
Right.
At least some people.
I agree with you.
I think there's a great, not all people, whether he deserves it or not remains to be seen. But I do think just the overall public perception and the fact that he is Johnny Depp.
I want to know how they picked the jury for this because everyone
Right?
knows who Johnny Depp is.
Yeah. I was thinking about that too. I was like, this has got to be, I mean, like, I'm assuming the jury's like sequestered away. Like, this
Yeah.
is like a big,
Sequestered away from where? Like,
I don't know, from media. You know what I mean? Like, they can take a
the
jury and like,
information.
put them in hotels. Like,
but are they allowed to know who Johnny Depp is?
Of course.
Yeah.
I think so,
Okay,
right?
so
Yeah.
they can know who Johnny Depp is, but not
How do you-
information about the like. How
It's
do
I
you
just
don't
the
know.
case.
I'm like,
Yeah.
are they
Same
being,
for the Black China and Kim Kardashian or
Mhm.
Kris Jenner.
Like,
Like, how do you pick?
I don't
Yeah.
think they're supposed to like, they're not supposed to be like going on like all the things that we're following. Like,
But they're allowed to know who the people are.
how to your point, how would they not know to it? Like, how could they? I'm sure you could find to a certain extent, but like,
we gotta really dig.
yeah,
That would be so weird.
but that does play a role.
Yeah.
For sure. I want to pose a question. I thought about this the other day. Like with social media being what it is, and people being, it's so easy to just tweet anything and say anything and throw out an accusation. And historically, as we now know, especially from your past, like defamation cases are hard to prove,
Mm-hmm.
and the laws around them. Do we need to change those laws at all?
Yes.
And like, it's so easy to like, should we change laws where if you're going to throw out an accusation about someone and it's then later on proved that either you were like you did a poor job or lazy job reporting on it, or if like, does that not only defamation, should there be laws around that?
Well, I think the burden of proof is on the wrong person. That's for one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there should be laws changed because it's just like anyone can say anything and just be like, oh, that's just what I heard. And they're still allowed to spread that rumor. Like, what?
But what if I say, what if the opposing argument would be that's going to make it harder for, say, victims to come forward if they're faced with the possibility of like being charged with a crime or a financial penalty because the person they accused had more means to defend themselves, and it's not what happened, it's what you can prove, so to speak, right? There could be that argument, but we are living in a world where it is so easy to just say shit right now.
Well,
we live in a
think about the whole, I mean, obviously not on the same scale, but the Clayton of it all. I slept with Clayton last night. Suddenly we realize it's not Clayton at all, but that went viral.
Yeah.
Everyone was suddenly thinking Clayton was this awful person who was cheating on Susie.
And what if like Susie wasn't the queen that she is, who's like patient and calm and understanding? What if it affected their relationship and they broke up? What if this came out at a time where they were fighting about, like, I don't know, how much jelly should go in a peanut butter sandwich? It was a stupid fight that they just had a bad day. This came out, Susie left, and in a moment of weakness, kissed a guy at a bar, which wouldn't make it okay, wouldn't justify it, but like it all kind of happened because this shit came out and they were a little bit rocky, and ultimately it affected their relationship. That's affecting someone's life. And what if it affected, both of their potential to earn more money? Like, it is a privilege to go on a reality TV show and get a following, and none of us deserve the earning potential that comes with it. But at the same time, like, does that mean you have the right to just be so careless to go on a TikTok and like make up a story just because whether she was drunk or he was drunk and there was some lying? And there just seems to be so little accountability, whether it was malice or not. Like, if the only...
Like, go correct it. If you found out later, like if you spread misinformation and you find out later that it was misinformation, correct it. Hey, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Take it back. Like, hold yourself accountable.
But even if you do, no one hears the correction as much as they hear the accusation.
This is true.
But even that whole thing too, it's like when Susie and Clayton have talked about it, like this girl said she reached out to Susie. She tried to tell Susie first, but she waited like an hour, maybe two, and Susie didn't answer because she didn't see the DM, and then she makes this video for everyone to see. Yeah. I'm like, what are we trying to gain here?
I just think in a world where you have cancel culture and then you also have things like the Me Too movement, and you still have just an overwhelming number of just victims who need to be believed, and just in general, we need to believe victims more than we are. It should be easier for people who are violated in any way to come forward about an experience that happened to them. And I think the laws, interestingly enough, are set up in a way where it allows people to lie without ramifications. So now that will make it harder to believe victims.
Well,
right?
It's also because, and like so often we talk about this as believe women, and this is an area where it's incredibly hard to gather statistics on it. But the statistics that they have gathered show that men are more likely to be sexually assaulted than they are to be falsely accused. So it's a matter of, when we talk about like kind of this, yes, of course, like there is absolutely a place, and we need to talk about specifically the way this violence impacts women, but this also is violence that impacts everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, to your point though, is that because there's so many women who are victims by men, right? There's more men who are sexually
or like perpetrators.
Yeah, but wrongfully accused. But when someone is wrongfully accused, back to our original point, people hate that so much. Like, you know what it one of the first movies I ever saw as a kid that was an adult movie was the movie The Fugitive. Are you guys familiar with that movie?
No.
Love that movie. It's a
We don't
Harrison
say-
Harrison Ford movie. It's older. Like it's one of those things. Shanti's giving me I fucking love that movie. First time I saw that, and it's about a doctor who was wrongfully accused of murdering his wife, and he was sentenced to the death penalty. And in the beginning of the movie, he escapes, and then he's a fugitive, and he's trying to prove his innocence throughout the movie. And I saw this movie as like a 9-year-old, right? Like 9 or 10. And it's the first memory I have of feeling anxiety. I remember watching it and feeling like, oh my God, you could be wrongfully accused of something. Like you could be sentenced to death for something you didn't do. And I just remember so vividly that feeling I felt of true anxiety as a child.
Yeah.
And ended up being it's a great movie, but I think that's a relatable feeling for people. The idea you could be so wrongly accused, back to like you saying, even though more men are sexually assaulted than who are falsely accused, but when it does happen, it becomes such a big story, right? That it has it's almost giving too much like attention, because the idea of people being falsely accused is something like everyone I think relates to that fear of being falsely accused about anything.
I have 4 boys, and I think about that all the time. I'm like, what if my kids, like, what would we do?
Yeah.
What do you do?
And it's just like, and I think that feeling is something that is very relatable. So when it does happen, like in this particular trial, we tend to focus on it too much, which then makes it
we try to
harder
apply
believe
this widely when it's something that is only applicable to a very, very small percentage of cases.
And I guess what I'm trying to say is I agree with Kail that I think that we should figure out a way to hold people more accountable, so that the idea being is when people come forward, they're coming forward for a reason, because like the opposite would be if they're lying, they could serve a big penalty for it, and they're coming forward anyways. I mean, this is so nuanced, and like we don't know how it could be done, but
Right.
it seems like there should be discussions about that, because it's almost having an adverse effect on the people who truly need to be believed. It can be easy for people, and whether it's domestic abuse or just trying to get attention. Like, the Clayton story had nothing to do with domestic abuse. So it had to do with just infidelity and cheating. But like that that had an impact on people's lives.
Right.
Right.
And it affected how people look at Clayton, his reputation. Yeah.
There are thousands of people out there thinking that Clayton has cheated on Susie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because they saw that TikTok and saw nothing else and just kind of moved on with their
And
lives.
even though they're fine,
Yeah.
they'll still think that he did that.
And it's just like, it's a weird thing. So how do we, create an environment in a social media age where anyone can pick up their phone and tell a story, whether it's satirical or a false accusation, whether it's they know they're lying or they are just kind of more reckless, and it's just a really messy thing.
I think more people want to see others fail than people want to see others do well. And so I don't think that we'll ever actually be able to have those changes, because people never want to see someone else doing better than them. So as long as there's more of those people, we're never going to see changes.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, how both of you who have surely like been on the receiving end of a ton of really like hateful, there we go, hateful like floods of DMs. Like, how do you make sense of like someone choosing to send those messages? And I know you don't try not to read them, but like, what is your mentality in terms of like making sense of why someone would take the time to like write such atrocious things to you?
I mean, I've been in therapy twice a week for the past 2.5 years. At this point, I understand that it's like projecting, right?
Yeah.
Like it really is them hating themselves, unfortunately. But it took me a long time to get here. I used to cry all the time. Like what? Like why? But there really is so, like, the trolls definitely stand out louder than like the positive comments and the positive. I don't know if it's the same for you, but
my therapy is generally centered around my ability to focus on what matters and not try to focus on things that don't matter, specifically around trolls or people. And honestly, I had a really bad day yesterday because someone who like, who has a podcast who like just fucking hates me, which is fine. You're allowed to hate me.
Totally.
But like it's someone who like hates that I like have my advice like Ask Nick show where
Mhm.
it's just like I take a lot of pride and I try to do it right and I try to be respectful of the fact that like even though I constantly say like I'm not an expert and like don't like, I'm just someone's opinion, like don't take this as
Right.
but like I know that like they don't listen to my show. I know it's like their reaction based off the show, but like some of the things they said about me in terms of like was like it just bothered me, and then they
Right.
made me call a friend to just check in and be like, am I doing it right or am I doing it wrong? And is it like, and it was just some random person who, to your point, yeah, I know it's a projection, but like sometimes it gets through my kind of like my like that barrier I've learned to put
Totally.
up. It penetrates that logical thought of like it's not me, it's them, and I can't. But it's just like, what if other people feel this way, and what am I do? Like, am I?
It's almost like the opposite of words of affirmation, right? Like the idea behind words of affirmation, you read good things about yourself or other people that you'll believe them, right? But when you're constantly reading hate comments or you have that one person that doesn't ever give up, you start to question yourself and how, is that how other people view me? Is that how a lot of people view me? Is it just that one person or is it all these people? Like it breaks you down. And I don't
Yeah. Well, I went down a rabbit hole because this one person has a very small following, and there were like other people were like, yeah, I fucking hate him too, or whatever. Which is like, I know there's more than like one person who
Sure.
doesn't like me. Like and then other people would say, hey, like it's good to have critics. It means that you're doing things right because
Right.
you get reached to a certain level where some people just enjoy disagreeing with you.
Right.
Like it's a thing. And
A weird thing, but a thing.
But nevertheless, it was just like it truly ruined my day. Like
Yeah.
it was like
I'm sorry
I
you had a
almost
bad
wanted to
day.
call Darlene.
I love Darlene.
I was just like, it's one of those things where, like most of the time I'll just talk about it with Natalie and she's always really good at it of like talking like me down off the ledge. And I'm good at my like therapy. For me, therapy is giving me the tools to get myself better at talking myself off the ledge where I don't like ruminate and like have it ruin my own day. But every once in a while, just like it's stuck knowing it's just like I don't want to do this wrong,
Right.
and it can be really, can be a thing.
I can relate. Definitely can relate. I don't think when I signed up for reality TV that I knew that aspect was going to come with it because I don't think that it would have such an impact if we weren't on reality TV and we weren't in the public eye. Like we wouldn't focus on it so much, like it wouldn't hold so much weight, I don't think.
Yeah, because I also like I don't know how you feel about from your end and the things that like you talk about, but like I also recognize that like if you don't listen to like the Ask Nick, if you don't regularly listen to the show, I suppose on some level you think to yourself, this fucking guy from The Bachelor who I've truly fucking hated, who I saw be petulant or whatever, is now like giving advice to women? Are you fucking kidding me? And like I get that, but it's like something like I don't know how you feel, but there's a part like my most toxic side wants to like sit down with every person who doesn't like me and try to convince them that I'm not a bad guy.
Yeah. No, I'm the same exact way. Actually got an offer for Catfish Trolls Edition. And I wanted to meet my trolls on the show, but they all declined.
I relate to that feeling so bad.
I just want to tell me why you hate me. Just tell me.
Yeah.
Like I want to understand like what is the root of the problem.
They declined.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised.
Yeah, and they were offered like I think it was like $1,000 for filming, and they were all like, "Why would we take 2 days off of work to film with you?" And I was just like, "Y'all hate me so bad, say it to my face." Like,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just like, I spent an entire afternoon thinking about this person. I don't know who they are. And it like, I find it embarrassing for myself that like the energy I gave to this person.
Do you ever talk back to them? Like you ever respond?
Oh, no. I try not to. I mean, if I like on social,
Yeah.
Because when you first said that, I thought like in my head, and I was like,
Yeah, of course.
Boy, do I.
boy, I was like,
It's a
honey,
fucking
like,
trial in here.
you know how many times Natalie goes, what are you guys talking about? And by guys, like whoever I is, I'm in the middle of a discussion
Right.
with somebody.
Yeah.
It's kind of embarrassing. It's like a thing we joke about because I often I think look crazy, but yeah.
Okay.
But
I also have.
I try not to engage.
Yeah.
Once in a while, I'll respond with like I try to kill with kindness.
Right.
Hope you're well.
Hope you're well. Thanks for listening.
My favorite is when they act like they have like a degree and a family and they're so happy. And I'm like, happy people don't do this. Happy people do not do this.
But in reality, they're like I think often working professionals who are quite educated and
But they're miserable.
and like they use like they think because maybe they're lawyers or maybe they're whatever and there's a level of intelligence, but they also are
Miserable.
major fans
Yeah.
and miserable, and it's like a weird thing.
But I feel like I've been there. I feel like I've been in a place where I wasn't super happy, but like I would say I was happy and I didn't know until I actually was happy. And I was like, oh, that's why I did those things. Like, you know what I mean? Like they don't realize how miserable they actually are.
Yeah. But I do think bring this full circle. I don't know if there ever will be laws that are changed, but I just the way the internet is going, I just feel like something either everyone needs to be verified or something where like we need to hold people accountable for the things that are just put out there because they can really impact people's lives.
Yeah.
You know, especially like trolling, like high school kids bullying each other and things like that, and harassment, suicides that are happening because of online bullying and things like that. And we have no safeguards around like holding people accountable.
Sure.
Because like you can create like a bullshit account and no one even knows it's you, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I think about that a lot, about how like the internet is still relatively new, and I think it's going to be regulated in so many ways. Like even just from like a more like capitalist standpoint, like I feel like I'm going to like be telling my grandkids, be like, yeah, you used to be able to make so many emails and just keep doing the free trial. And like I don't think you're going to be able to. I think they're going to crack down on like someone's like digital presence and make it so that way it's like linked in a singular way to you.
Yeah,
I almost feel like they should.
I hope they do,
Yeah.
but I think we are so far away because I think it's still incredibly new, even though we don't think of it that way. Still.
Right.
Selling Sunset. I know it's out.
It's out.
You guys are big fans. I
Yeah.
have yet to
Yeah.
be able to tune in. Give us a brief. What's going on?
Have you ever seen any season?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
How much have you seen?
I've seen most of the first season. I know there's like 5 seasons.
Yeah.
And I've seen like bits of each season. And like as someone who like follows Chriselle closely and other people
She's
on the
so
show,
cute.
like I'm very familiar with the show and the characters on it, but I'm not familiar with like the specific drama going on.
Okay.
Like what's the major storyline of this season so far?
Well, it's picking up where season 4 ended. So
Mhm.
season 4 was we had 2 new women join the brokerage. Christine was pregnant, then had the baby, and she's come out since that she was dealing with a lot of like postpartum issues. But the women, like it was really Christine versus everyone else. And she was getting caught up in potentially some lies, and she shared an ex-boyfriend with one of the new girls. So they like had an ex in common. They had very different stories of
What happened?
if there was cheating, if there was
A
time
proposal.
lapse, over with the 2 of them. Season 4 ended with like a big party with everyone, and there was kind of like this blow up between Christine and these other girls. They wanted to have like a full group confrontation, so
kind
that
of like an intervention.
yeah, so like there was no she said. They wanted everyone to talk at the same time. And Christine wanted nothing to do with it. So she basically ended season 4 one-on-one with Mary, who they used to be roommates. They started season 1 together. And Mary was like, stop lying. Like, you're not, like, what are you doing? Like, be honest with me. I'm giving you one final, like, olive branch. Christine yeeted. And then season 5 just picked up Mary and her husband Romaine, Chriselle and her boyfriend Jason, who owns the brokerage. They were all traveling in Europe together. So they're living their best lives on vacation. It's really weird to see Chriselle and
broke
Jason together.
First
They're
of all-
now broken up, but yeah.
Right now, or in season 5, they're still together.
At the
They're still
beginning,
together,
they're
yeah.
together. And everyone's just finding out.
And who are the new people on the show?
Emma.
Emma joined last season, as did Vanessa. There's a
Emma's
new,
the one who recently
Chelsea.
came out with the
The Ben Affleck story.
Yeah.
Yes. Micah is so fine.
Which one's Micah?
He is the contractor that Emma.
Oh, I'm only
Is
a couple
always-
episodes in.
You should.
Oh, is this a new character?
He's a contractor that is building these houses that I guess Emma is going to
That's
list for.
sexy.
He's
If someone's
so.
gonna build me a home,
He's not even my type at all, but I'm like, wow, he's so attractive. He's. I don't know. I'm only on episode 3 because
Okay.
I literally have to schedule my TV time. But he's so good looking, and also I love Chriselle. I think she's the cutest.
do you like her and Jason? Because for me, they give me weird vibes.
It's
together.
definitely weird. I don't know that yeah, it's weird.
It's just like, and they didn't like lead us into it in any way. So like, first scene is
Well, and
Jason
didn't-
being like, "Babe, let me get your suitcase." Like, blah, blah, blah.
How he dated somebody else before too, right?
Mary.
Mary.
And so
Okay.
then
Mary.
he threw them a
Now he's
birthday
dating
party.
Chriselle.
He threw Mary and Chriselle a birthday party, and I was like, "You're toasting 2 women you've had sex with."
That's a little weird.
And
But I
they
guess
all
Mary
work
doesn't
together.
care because Mary's married.
I guess.
I need to talk to her about
Yeah,
that when
but
she
Mary,
comes on.
I feel like still benefited from being like the little darling of Jason. You know what
Well,
I
now
mean? Like
she's
their
the manager.
closeness, and like
Right.
that was such a
She just
thread on
got
the
a
earlier
promotion.
seasons. Was like her getting a lot of opportunities and sort of the perception that this was linked to her romantic history. So I wonder.
If Chriselle's gonna get it. Well, and Christine even said that. She was like, "Oh, I was wondering why I wasn't getting any listings." And then I realized I'm not fucking my boss.
Do you think they actually like sell houses all year long or just for the show?
I don't know.
I think they must have started that way,
But they surely don't do that now.
but now.
I don't know.
I'll ask Mary and I'll get back to
Well,
y'all.
there was a big thing. Didn't Chrissy Teigen call them out at like the very beginning, like season 1 or 2? And she's like, "Why have I never seen any of your names on listings?"
I mean,
And I
know
think it
Chrissy
was like
Teigen
Chriselle
was
being
one of
like,
them.
"What are you talking about? We're all real."
I know, like Chriselle's been on this show, and like she absolutely sells real estate. Like
Like all year long or
I
like
don't know.
once or twice?
I mean, like I think the thing about real estate, you could. Does that mean you're less of a agent? or
no, I
not?
don't think
Like,
so. I
it's
just was curious if it was like an actual full-time thing or if they,
Well, I mean, clearly Chriselle, and I'm most familiar with Chriselle, is that like she clearly has a bunch of things going on, and a lot of people like sell real estate as like
side hustle.
yeah, even and are very successful in
Right,
it.
of
Like you can
course.
kind of
Mhm.
pick and choose. You can reserve your time as a real estate agent to like only sell like certain premier properties with certain clients,
Right.
where it's not something.
That's kind of cool.
It's your only job.
You
So
could
like,
never do
Yeah.
that in Delaware.
And also like the work that you're doing, if you're putting yourself in adjacent to like high net worth individuals, even if you're just socializing, like that is in some ways like networking and like doing things for. So
Sure.
there's so much
Yeah.
that you can do to cultivate that like real estate presence that's not actually selling
Right.
houses.
Well, I think too that's like in LA or like Miami, maybe even Dallas or New York, but not like in Delaware. You have to make it pretty much your full-time thing. Like the Amish are my neighbors, so it's just very different.
Kail,
Yeah.
thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Boy, we just got through a ton here.
And do I understand you guys are doing a little swap?
Yeah.
Yeah, I will be on your podcast.
Yeah.
Also, as you mentioned, you have Mary coming on.
Yes.
Which I think is like a bigger deal than me.
I don't know.
because-
I feel like maybe we should just have you and her on at the same time.
Heck yeah.
That
Well,
might-
I DM'd Christine yesterday to try to have her come on the podcast. Chriselle has an open invite always, and we definitely want to get some Selling Sunset cast on the show.
I don't know. If y'all want to come on at the same time, that's fine.
It's your show.
Oh, I'm good for whatever. I'm game for whatever.
I'm grateful to be on your
Yeah.
show, but when is the Mary episode coming out?
Yeah.
You're recording it soon.
Yeah, it's this week.
You're recording it this week,
Yeah.
and probably soon. So look
Yeah.
for that
Yeah.
on your podcast.
Yeah. The Barely Famous podcast.
Barely Famous. Not to be confused with Almost Famous.
I didn't know that was a podcast.
It's okay.
Sorry.
A lot of podcasts out there.
I know,
It's
yeah.
hard to find a name.
Yeah, and then I like called mine the Viall Files, which I kind of regret every day.
Why?
But
I love it.
That's not even how you pronounce your name,
what are you talking about?
right?
Viall.
Yeah.
Vile.
The Viall
Viall.
Files.
Yeah, exactly.
Viall.
Listen, I'm insecure about my last name.
Why?
What do you mean why?
It's great.
Thank you. Women I dated made me feel insecure. And then
Okay.
being in the public.
By being like, I'm not taking it. Like if we get
No,
married.
growing up, when like you're at any summer camp or whatever, like people people call your name. So no one got my last name right.
Okay.
And I always remember as a kid being like, how hard is it it's how it's a vial. It's how it's spelled. But I think vile, right?
Okay.
I think a lot of people would overemphasize like other aspects or call it veil because they thought to themselves, there's no way this last name is pronounced vile. And I just probably as a kid, I didn't know what that word meant. And when I started dating in like high school and more specifically college, women I dated would comment about like my last name. And then I was like, oh. And then I remember asking like my aunts who have the same last name, and they're like, no, I fucking hated my last name.
Oh.
And then I got real self-conscious about my last name or what it means. And then you go on TV and then, you learn about so many things. Like when you go on reality TV, as you know, you learn about all the possible ways someone can make fun of you.
Yeah.
That
This
you were
is
like
true.
completely unaware of. You're like, oh my God, I see it now. Oh my God. And so, yeah, I've become very self-conscious about it. And then, so what do? I put in the name of my show.
That's okay.
Own it.
Yeah, exactly.
I like Wi-Fi a lot. I feel like I'm
Wi-Fi is cute.
Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi show?
Wi-Fi.
Viall Files.
I say Wi-Fi fam sometimes in the DMs.
Yeah.
That's cute. There's a lot you can do with
I
it.
do.
It's fine.
People write nice DMs.
Kail, you're an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for
Thank you so
having me.
much for
I appreciate
coming.
it.
Thanks for sharing some insight on your experience in a defamation case. I should have done more research.
you're
I did
fine.
not realize that. But
Don't look it up.
what a nice... Hey,
like, "Please
listen,
don't."
I think it's something that was obviously very personal for you, an emotional thing. It offered some great insight and perspective on this case, as most things are in the world. Like, they're nuanced and they're worthy of conversations, and I guess that's what we try to do on this show. I'm always afraid when it's a sensitive topic we talked about. I hope we gave it its respectful. Like, I wanted to talk about this trial without getting into the fandom of it all,
Right.
because there's so much passion, and we live in a time where it's not like we don't tend to believe who's right or wrong. We tend to believe who we like the most. I think that's also dangerous territory. Anyway, Kail, thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you
been
again.
a pleasure. Thanks for listening, guys. Don't forget to send in your questions at asknick@castmedia.com, cast with a K. Make sure to tune in tomorrow for Clayton and Susie, Matt King, his girlfriend Patricia, to talk a mediation, which I think will be wildly discussed. Until then, enjoy your day. See you tomorrow. Hey guys, thanks for watching. But before you go, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss any future videos, like our Mondays Ask Nick, especially if you're looking for some relationship stories and relationship advice, as well as our Wednesday interviews with your favorite celebrities and experts. See you next time.